God, what did I want to read? I wanted to read something recently. And I just realized I covered my mouth in front of the microphone, so that'll be great.
Probably won't.
Oh fuck, what is it called? I think it's called Innocence.
I think it's called One Piece.
I think it's called Innocence. It has like an art style very reminiscent of the
Of One Piece?
of the Final Fantasy artist that did the first 6 games, that did the portrait art for the first 6 games.
Yoji? No, that's
It's Amano.
Wait.
It's Amano.
Yeah, okay. I was thinking of Yoji Shinkawa, but that's definitely MGS.
Yeah. It's probably not Amano, but I can't find my art book, and it's been a while. But anyway, I'm going to check that out because I got a recommendation on it.
What is up, Internet? It's your boy Brando and Christopher House. Welcome to another episode of the Otaku Remix Podcast. Christopher, how are you doing over there?
I'm doing all right,
man.
Lands. In the northern lands, like 3 hours north. Things are all right, man. Not been watching as much anime as I like, but we at least got to view one show that's of above average quality. Above average.
I'm like, say it. Say it.
Say it, motherfucker. Say it.
It's good.
It's good. It's okay. Great Pretenders.
Yes. I think is it The Great Pretender?
I don't care.
Whatever. It's just like, shut up, Brando.
I'm not sponsored.
It is Great Pretender.
Mm-hmm. It reminds me of the Foo Fighters song. But
yeah,
anyway.
Isn't it related to like a Queen song, I thought?
Maybe it's a Queen song. I remember the Foo Fighters song called The Pretender. So
okay.
But anyway.
I'm pretty sure it's a reference to a Queen song, but I'll have to double check that. But either way.
Oh, so we're JoJo's? Is this JoJo's? Is this show a giant JoJo's reference?
You wish.
Cool.
You'd like it more, maybe.
Okay, so let's get into it. I recommended this show. I recommended the show because I'd seen a couple clips and I was like, this use of color, and even though the character art style is still very anime-esque, the background concept art is not. Mostly because it's just not set in Japan. But I thought it was unique, and so I was like, Brando, we should check this out instead of Japan Sinks because that looks terrible. So we go ahead. I go ahead and I start watching the show, and I'm like, Brando, I've made a giant mistake because case 1, there are 3 cases in this show. All of them follow the same 4 core group members of scam artists. Your main
confidence men.
Yeah, whatever. Scam artist, con men, whatever you want. But your main protagonist is Makoto. He is a Japanese young man who gets swindled into becoming a con artist. So I don't know how good of a con artist you'd expect him to be, but whatever. He's good. So him and the rest of his crew. Each of these cases follows them conning a generally high ranking members of the underbelly of society. So like the first one's usually, a drug,
more or less. Yeah.
The first one's like a drug dealer. The second one's like, what is the second one? The second one's like a corrupt sports programmer, more or less, and then the last one's like a literal con artist of the art world. So and the first case is the longest one. It's like 6 episodes, I think
that it's 5. I think it's 5. Is it 5? Yeah, it's 544. Yeah, because
okay,
it's 5, and the latter two are 4 each, which comes out to the total of 13 episodes, which is the total runtime of The Great Pretender. Yeah, season 1, we'll call it.
Yeah, I can see there being more.
Of course, yeah, a lot of open-ended stuff still to be explored.
Well, it's nice because it does have an anthology-like attitude to it, where it's just like, this case focuses on the group in this time in their life, and then the next one is like 4 years later, and then the next one is an undetermined amount of time later, where they're suddenly in France for some reason. Like it doesn't have a overarching goal. It's just that they're con artists, and these are the jobs that they've done.
Yeah, no, it's definitely, I appreciate that element of it. It's not only very freeing, but it's kind of like it feels more true to life as sort of the fast and loose lifestyle that these types of characters would be kind of engaged. I know it's not very.
I was about to say that's about the only thing that's true to life about this show.
I mean, in the sense of it's a believable element of a con artist's life. You know,
it gives you the feeling of a roaming con artist.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Yeah, the impression of like that sort of like Ocean's 11, like when the next movie starts, like you see, like, you know, it's I mean, I had to say it at least once, but it's
I'm saying, oh my god, because I love those movies, including 12. I know people shit on 12, but I really like 12.
Yeah, that's fantastic. We can get into that later, possibly in this podcast. But
honestly, that's what this show gives you the vibe of. Although it's a lot more. It's a lot more cartoonish, which is fine. It has an anime style anyway, but it kind of bumps heads when it tries to get into a more serious tone, and that's kind of my biggest problem with the first case, because case 1, they're dealing with a Hollywood executive who's also like a drug lord, and so the characters kind of bring up the really dark and likely real aspect of Hollywood, which is like, you know, young starlets go out and then they don't get jobs. They just get strung up with these kind of, you know, drug lord, scummy directors, and you know they're just used for sex, and they get hooked on drugs, and then they eventually either die or just, you know, become old and homeless or whatever. And it's like, okay, but then the next scene is weird drug related hijinks. You know what I mean? So it's not balancing it as well as the Scorsese films that I think it is trying to emulate. But it's still okay. It's still entertaining. I think its weakest point is that it focuses on your main protagonist Makoto, when he works better as a self-insert for the audience.
In the first one, he's very much like a vehicle for the audience to kind of fall into.
He is the vehicle throughout the entire series,
for sure.
But he is also the character focus. So he's this combination of an everyman while also trying to be like this like deep character with backstory, and it just doesn't. I don't feel like it balances very well.
In case 2 and case 3, I feel like he has a lot more agency, especially when he starts to take control at the end of case 2, and in case 3, it's like, you know, his entire idea. Obviously, his perspective is usually our perspective, especially through case 1, which is like very much the POV, as we kind of get introduced to the majority of the cast, the type of world that we're going to be in.
That part of him works really well. Yeah,
no, for sure. And that first case is fun. Like you said, the sort of tone that it strikes is not exactly explicitly like the Scorsese impression that we kind of thought had going in. But like, it's still very informed, I think, like in the sense the director for the series is Hiro Kaburagi, and he's done 91 Days, which is a really fantastic gangster story. He did Kimi no Torike, which is like a romance series, but still wonderfully, like, elements of its composition and framing are pretty high level. But 91 Days, you can really get a hard body sense of it. Not only is a great take on gangsters, but a very sort of like knowledgeable sense of cinematography and how to kind of inject that into anime, those elements of cinema. But like this obviously doesn't take it that far.
I think the biggest issue, here's the thing, you have to change your expectations, because going in I was expecting this to be that one case to be the whole season, and instead it's only 5 episodes. So instead of thinking it as a Scorsese-esque film, which it kind of feels like in the beginning, because you have this like dark turn on the underbelly of Los Angeles, while also showing like a newcomer entering its family and its society. So you get those elements and you're like, oh, is this where they're going to go? And instead it's actually much closer to an Ocean's movie, where the villain is overly villainous for like no reason. And the setup is like pretty much, I would say 50% of the plot is the setup. And then you get like maybe another 25% that's the characters, and then the last 25% is the execution, which makes it very condensed and leaves very little room to do actual character development, which is fine, because again the focus is on the actual heist and the actual events that unfold. The problem for me is just that it feels like they're trying to juggle a bit too much in those first 5 episodes, because they have
Sometimes,
to introduce the entire cast. They have to do Makoto's backstory. They have to do the drug lord's backstory. They have to do the heist itself, and then they have to do minor spoiler territories. They have to do the events that unfold within 5 episodes, whereas the other 2 cases only have to do one character's backstory and the heist and the events that unfold for 4 episodes.
How it could be a little bit messy from like
I think it's a little messy
from like a writing and structure standpoint. But in general, I feel like they still communicate enough to inform us about every character within the gang.
Okay.
It's funny to see Cynthia's introduction as sort of the, for lack of a better term, like not heel turn, but like the double agent.
Well, it's funny because like up until that point, because we're in spoiler territory now, I guess. Up until that point, we only have 3 members of the crew, and in these types of shows, you usually have 4. It's usually 4 people, usually 2 girls and 2 guys, or 2 guys, 1 like effeminate guy and a girl or something like that. That's usually the combo that they go for. And we only have 1 girl and 2 guys, and even the girl's tomboy. So it's like, where's our femme fatale? Where's our that kind of girl? And it turns out she was just in hiding on the exactly. So that's kind of fun.
It was fun. Yeah, there's a lot of nice moments in that first case. Cynthia in general, like like that character could have easily just been like the sort of like honorable police officer chasing them down, throughout. Oh,
that's what I totally thought it was.
But then there's a nice little cute heel turn. In general, the overall story for the first one is fun. Like you said, the tone it strikes is that sort of very reminiscent of American Crime, like grit, in like very a little bit darker than the overall show Blaze, and then it kind of
it hints at that in the beginning, but it really is closer to Oceans and Lupin and stuff like that.
It gives it to ground itself a little bit, but it's a lot more light. It's a lot more mellifluous. It's a lot more fun, which is great. Visually, I think we kind of haven't really touched too deeply on it, but like you said, the background art in general, a lot of the scenery art, the work from Yusuke Takeda, who's the art director, it's super good. It's super interesting. It's very impressionistic. It lends a lot of. It's something that's very. I don't see anything like this typically. I mean, at all.
I've seen it from stuff like who was the author for Watchmen? Like
Alan Moore is the
writer,
author.
I forget
the artist, David. I usually know this thing, so
it's okay. Moving forward, it reminds me of a lot of American comic book art style, where it's just like vibrant colors and realistic shapes and proportions, but the line edging is not like crisp and smooth. It's very like slightly off, just to give you the feel of like a wild and untamed area.
It's much more ambiguous, and it kind of lends you to kind of like insert elements into it yourself, kind of like and part of the reason I think that it also is very effective is because it kind of helps the composition and blending of 3D. There's not too much. It's like the standard things that people use these days in the anime industry for 3D vehicles, like the car chase and the first thing, maybe some of the background characters, the plane ride, the plane racing. I think blends better with the sort of very like stylistic backgrounds that they have. I think it kind of makes the whole thing kind of look a little bit more seamless. Yeah. So I think that's one of the best parts about it.
And even between cases, they kind of slightly alter their color motifs. So the first case is set in Los Angeles, and it has a very desert rose palette, where you have the harsh yellow sand earth tones clashing with the neon buildings nearby, and that makes for a great kind of setting. Whereas the second, I don't know where the second one is actually located.
It's like the Arab Emirates, I think.
Yeah, I think that's what they're going for. But
I'm pretty sure.
Oh, you think it's just actually there? Okay.
I think that might be the Arab Emirates. The way that those look like man-made islands.
Yeah, but that's what it feels like. You get this imagery of like almost tropical and tropics with the water nearby, with again the very modern, not even neon modern, like current day overbearing light cities, and then the last case takes place in France, so you actually get a lot more earth tone colored.
Oh, no, France. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Earth, you're okay. Just stop fucking interrupting me.
You good. You good.
No, the last part takes place in France, and it has a much more watercolor style, which goes along with the painter motif that's going on in the episode. So, like, just slight little touches here and there make for a really good artistic direction for the entire series, up to currently, I should say. But anyway.
All the way to the end, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of the elements of the production is really good. It's done by Wit Studio. I think, like we mentioned earlier, you know, they've done fucking pretty good job on Attack on Titan thus far, and Vinland Saga, and a few other pieces that I could probably sift through, but I don't want to drag on. Obviously, we watch this on Netflix, which it's licensed by. The music's done by Yutaka Yamada, who also worked on Vinland Saga, but also on Tokyo Ghoul and a couple of other very solid works. His composition is pretty fun. I really like the soundtrack of this series quite a bit.
Yeah.
I feel like it blends into scenes very well. Like you mentioned, there's a very strong distinction between each case, and like not only in the art direction and the visual perspective, but also from a music perspective. I feel like the music choice for LA, the sort of kind of very bouncy, fast-paced drums that kind of move in and out of scenes have really helped with the pacing. And then you have like take it all the way to the end. The last case in Paris, it's a lot more slow, romantic, kind of mysterious music that kind of belays what's going on with that case, the art heist, by the end. But yeah, no, it's pretty good stuff. Pretty. But
I would say if case 1's not doing it for you, at least make it to case 2. I really think the show picks up there, just because the team all knows each other at that point. So they kind of have better chemistry from the get-go, which makes the explanation of the heist a lot more fun, because there's no like bumbling between them, even though there's plenty of bumbling because that's just how life goes. But yeah, I'd say the show's in a really good spot. I think its production. This is probably one of the best produced shows I think we've talked about on this.
The animation is fluid. Podcast. It's a lot of fun to watch.
It's super consistent too. There's almost no points where you're just like, oh, that's where the budget ran out. Like, it is really solid throughout. You can recognize almost the entire cast because they hired really good professionals. I didn't check out the English dub yet. I wouldn't be surprised if they hired a lot of good people though. The only rough time is when they're like, they're pretending to speak fluent English. And they are speaking fluent English, but it's Japanese actors clearly like trying to do their best English accent, and it's just kind of hits you sideways.
That's from our perspective, obviously.
I know, absolutely, and they're doing their best. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm just saying it's weird, and they eventually humorously cut to all Japanese within a couple minutes.
I was gonna say that first intro sequence where Laurent is more or less playing Makoto and like vice versa, and like they're having that elongated conversation in English about and then eventually it cuts after like a decent portion. Like it isn't just like a little quick skit. They run this for like 5 minutes or so.
Yeah, it's a really long scene
of like this sort of English back and forth till eventually they're like, okay, we're gonna do the Japanese now because we know you can't sustain this for too long. But it's a nice gesture to kind of go ahead and kind of belay the Makoto's adeptness in English, and because they use it as a running joke, like
it is a running gag.
Accent or whatever the fuck they want to call it. But
he's fucking Japanese, of course he has a strange accent.
But overall, I thought this was a pretty fun series in the sense that I think that's it's rather exceptional in a lot of regards. I think that it's not it wasn't as how should I say imaginative, and like it didn't push the boundaries as far as I think it was going to go in the directions that I thought it was going to go, in the sort of like cinematography, in like a cinematic sort of gritty element. But I think I'm happy that it didn't, because it sort of utilizes the elements of the medium of anime pretty darn good. I mean, I
think it catches you off guard in certain moments, especially when like it suddenly does get a little real in the latter half.
Yeah,
but
in certain moments with certain characters, like.
But it's definitely not like your traditional shonen hyperbolic action show. You know,
it's not like a battle anime by any.
No.
It's through and through a heist story, and like, whereas like certain heist stories kind of have like that, like you said, like for the Ocean series, the plan that suddenly swells together. It's like the plan that is trying to keep itself together, sort of feeling.
It feels like if Batman was a con man, because despite these people being con men that like want to steal from the rich, they have to be enormously rich themselves for the amount of shit they pull in this show.
And there's fun hijinks related to the money, like the money they had to pull up to lure in the Sheik, like to lure in that motherfucker at the air pulling game, to like, to put
absolutely.
up to get him interested before jipping him to get their money back, because they're like, oh, thank God, because we all pulled money to get this 2.5 mil in there.
Well, I mean, even to start off, they needed to have a sponsored pilot team to do airplane races in the middle of an Arab city. Like that needs major moolah up front. So that's where the kind of fun comes from in that regard. It differentiates itself from Lupin and Oceans in that regard. It's not, because I wouldn't say it's fantastically clever. It has a few moments that caught me, but only because it's like, oh, we paid somebody to do this, or we, have this incredible technology to do that. It's never like through immense wits. It's more like through resources and stuff like that. I don't know. Maybe I'm undercutting it in that regard, but.
I mean, yeah, they do buy the way out of certain situations, but in general, I still think that it's a lot of interesting ploys with regards to, like, especially the first one in the scouting of Makoto, like getting that, like, lady inserted to test him. It's like they needed someone to play the doctor. I'm like, oh, okay, wow, this is really layered.
Yeah. Well, that's what I mean when I say like Batman, because it's like one of these things that's like you thought out everything.
I can see the like, methodology of it being a little bit
obsessive.
Like
to the point of like, no, I'm sorry, but no. In my head, that's the part that always like almost makes me hate these type of shows. I'm just like, I know you have to suspend your disbelief. I understand, but at the same time, I don't like it when people act like they're smarter than they actually are, which is ironic because I do it all the time. But the point being is that it does bug me when I get that instinct that somebody else is doing it, and like that's where these shows kind of lose me occasionally. But I think the style and the just the artwork really kind of keeps me there. The production really keeps me in.
Nah, it's really engaging from a lot of perspective. I think the narrative does enough. The visuals do more than enough. Like the visual production of the show was fantastic.
Yeah.
So overall, I really hope that they really, push through for another season of this. For a season 2. I don't know how successful this was in its initial airing, but on Netflix,
it's always hard to tell.
I hope it gets a lot of traction because it's definitely, in my opinion, one of the more refreshing series that I've watched for 2020 for certain, and as of late. So
I would say so. I wouldn't, because Lupin's still going on, but I wouldn't mind this continuing as like another, group heist kind of show that just appears once every couple of years, and they're like, hey, here's another case
of it.
It's not even an evolution. It's just a I think more modernized take, because Lupin, like, it's great, but let's face it, it's fairly old, and it goes off of the kind of archetypes that have been built up in anime up until that point, with Lupin being the newer brand of the group, and now it's kind of old hat, despite the new animated movie looking fantastic. It's kind of like, but the characters and their archetypes are kind of old hat. So now this group kind of changes things up a little bit, because Makoto's like very hardworking, honorable to a degree, but again, he's more or less the audience insert, where he's kind of like the moral compass for the group. Cynthia, Jesus Christ. Cynthia kind of still falls in that femme fatale, but in the sense of like being older as well, so constantly having to be confronted with that fact that she's slightly older than the character allows her to be.
I mean, not that old.
No, absolutely not. But in the sense of like, it it's I don't know if it's only meant as a joke, but like in these types of shows, the femme fatale always works her magic. And in this series, she never actually, despite looking stunning, she never actually gets to make it work because everybody is just like, yeah, but you wear like tons of makeup and stuff.
Yeah, it doesn't always. With the chic, it kind of like falls off.
It
like the
rarely lands. It very rarely lands.
It kind of like fake lands at first. And, like, you know, she's in there, and like later he's just like, women are trash. Exactly. And then after that, you know,
and that's not to dogpile on her. I'm just saying it's a different take on the character. On the archetype. Abigail is like the tough man, but she's a woman, obviously. A Baghdad. I don't think she's a refugee, but she's like a survivor of a Baghdad bombing. So that's weird. That's a I shouldn't say weird, but it's an interesting insert into that group dynamic.
She's a lot of things. She's like she if anything, she's more of an actress in a lot of ways than Cynthia is.
Oh yeah,
and because of the way that she plays so many different roles throughout all of these heists. I mean, and then she's sort of like the athletic side, like when you need like a physical element to the story. Like you said, she's not exactly like the muscle, but she is sort of like the.
She can be though.
She can be.
Of the four of them, she's probably the most like the muscle.
She yeah, for sure. If there had to be one, she gets put up into every.
She's
sort of
kind
scenario.
of the Swiss Army knife, where she doesn't have any ideas of her own, but as soon as you tell her she needs to do something, she gets it done.
Yeah, like she flies in the plane flights. She goes into like for like a very brief stint. She gets put into those prize fights where she has to like throw the one fight. And like everything she gets, like even that first impression of her where she just shows up and fakes the drug induced like hysteria. Yeah. Where she's flipping off everything before falling into the pool. Is pretty darn impressive. Yeah. Only to come down and also be like this sort of like weird war veteran.
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, her character is interesting, and I feel like there's a lot of depth there to be plunged even further beyond case 2.
Maybe. And then you finally have Laurent, who's just like the Ocean, the Danny Ocean of the group.
Yes,
who
the expert con man.
He knows everything. He knows everybody. He does all of his homework ahead of time, and he's always one step ahead of even the audience. He's always ahead of everybody.
Yeah, he's the ultimate gentleman thief, always targeting the rich. And
but he's not our protagonist. And that's what's also interesting, is that usually that's our Lupin, that's our Danny Ocean, that's our protagonist, because that's the male fantasy insert. Like everybody wants to be him, even though in this show everybody kind of fucking hates him because he's a smug asshole.
They kind of hate his persuasiveness. They hate that. I think he's like kind of touted as a playboy
because everybody knows what he's about, and he never convinces anybody ultimately through their like humanity. He always plays off of what they immediately want. He very much is kind of like the portrayal that they have in Lucifer, the show, where and I mean in the sense that like his ability is to understand people's desires, and that's what Laurent knows. He knows what you want, and he knows what you'll do to get what you want. And he does it in a very charming way, for sure. But everybody, if you're around him long enough, that's what he does, and it just kind of makes you sick because you're just like, ugh,
It kind of makes you feel simple or vulnerable.
It makes you feel like he's condescending you, and it makes you feel like he's better than you in that regard.
But I mean, he always. But I think
he's a good guy. I think.
Yeah, morally, nothing has been done yet to belay.
No, he's not. He's very much on the better side of the gray scale. But he's still, I think
he's chaotic good.
I think Cynthia even puts it perfectly at the end where, because case 3 is kind of set up to be a mistake that Makoto gets himself into and the gang has to get him out of, and Cynthia just happens to have some connections, some dog in the fight. But then right at the end, she goes up to Laurent and it's like, it's kind of funny how Makoto just happened to bump into this guy I have a beef with, and we just happened to do a heist against him, and that you probably knew the target that we were going into. And he just kind of goes, yeah, hey, you want to go see a gallery? And she just goes, go fuck yourself. And it's like, well, okay. So they kind of Go ahead.
Oh no, I was saying I like that last case a lot.
Yeah, that last case is the best one.
And it's not like Makoto explicitly fucks up, but like he undersold it so much.
No, he fucks up pretty hard. I would say he fucks up pretty hard. Not in the sense that like, in the sense of like he didn't do his full research. He went too bullheaded into something, and he didn't. You know, if you have a target, you should probably research the target before you go ahead and try to con them, because you never know who they're gonna be. Yeah. And in this case, he got conned indirectly.
That's true.
So he fucked up pretty bad, but not in a very obvious way until it unreveals itself. But that's how most fuck ups happen. You know, you go, yep, I got my seatbelt, I got my car running, I got everything going, and then you press down on the pedal and you realize that you forgot to fill up the tank. It's like you don't realize you fucked up until you fucked up.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, I mean, it's most of the thoughts I had. Did you have anything else you wanted to wrap up with in regards to Great Pretender?
I mean, I know you said you were interested in doing a write-up. Did you want to talk about anything you had in terms of that?
No, not yet. I mean, there's a lot to think about with regards to, like, I feel like the way this story executes.
Like any ideas or stuff like. It's not like anybody's gonna listen to this or steal the ideas, so you're good to expound.
No. I'm not worried about plagiarism at this point in my life.
You're not worried about one of our 20 listeners, if any, stealing your potential.
Which we appreciate. If you're reaching this point in the podcast, I thank you.
I thank you too. Obviously, I wouldn't. If I didn't care about you, I wouldn't talk about you. So thank you for sticking it out.
But no hard body ideas yet. I just know that I kind of like have a generally positive impression about the show, so I haven't really blackboarded what I want to talk about yet. But I think it'll kind of form itself out, especially because I'm in like playing with 2 other videos right now. It hasn't been like I haven't spent the time really to formulate what I want to talk about yet. So not yet. Mm-hmm. It'll be in the near future, if at all.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's fair. All right, I think that's everything I got then. Because I think it's a fairly straightforward show. I think that's probably what makes it so malleable for future cases and stuff like that. Because, you know, if I have a show I'm really interested, like we'll take it back to like Bebop or even like Hey Doro, where you have these pretty focused narratives, more or less. You don't want it to go on forever. And here, I could see them just popping in once every couple of years or so and just, you know, taking a back seat, not thinking too hard about it. As long as they keep the production value, I'd say, yeah.
Yeah, no, I think there's a lot of potential to kind of bounce back and forth, make some fun, like you said, like non-committal pieces of like good character vignettes. Like they could still explore what Laurent is about. There's still, I think, a lot of dynamics with regards to like the group that they could explore. If they want to push like a romance element, they could. Not that I'm saying that they need to. There's like light allusions to friendship being born between like Edamura and Abigail, but
but I kind of like their chemistry where it's at right now. Exactly. Where they're both the younger members of the group, so they have very different world experiences.
Yeah, so there's an understanding that's poor, and I appreciate that. And their relationship could be like, you know, pushed further. I'm not saying in a sense it has to be
not pushed specific. Further, just focused on a bit. It could be
developed a little. Yeah. But all the same, I feel like there's enough room to explore for more from like not only the cast, but obviously from the concept. You know, more fun heists, more. I already love the production in general, so I would not complain. So, and overall, a good time. Definitely recommend for anybody who hasn't seen it this year. It's probably one of the more refreshing anime of 2020, and moving forward, hopefully we can get a little bit more like it. But I think that's all we've got left really to say about that. So big props to the whole team over there that worked on that, and I think people know how to find us, hopefully.
If you found us here somehow, we have our channel, the Otaku Remix. Please subscribe and hit the bell to know when we upload stuff. Brando's still working on a few pieces that are going to come out, some solo projects. I have something of my own that I'm going to work on, and we'll keep trying to do the podcast uploads as best as we can. Otherwise, you can find us at the Otaku Remix on Twitter, streetfighter.com. And if you want to find me personally, I coach Street Fighter 5 and I commentate, so you can find me at Houseman2593. And if you want to see Brando styling, you have a what the hell is it called? An Imgur, or what is it called?
The fuck? You mean like Instagram?
Yeah, you got an Instagram.
There's an Instagram for the Otaku Remix channel. You can find it at the Otaku Remix. Most
I thought you were a shirt model too or something. I forget.
Sure.
Anyway,
what the fuck?
I remember you wearing some like stylish stuff and people taking photos of you, and that's why.
Oh my
like,
god. We're gonna talk about that. I don't know what we're referring to at the moment. I have no idea what we're referring to at the moment.
Okay. All right. Whatever. So yeah, you can find us on Instagram as well. But
right.
in any case, have a good life, have a good time, and we'll see you all next time.
Sounds good. Peace.